Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Entering the living room, Laura stared at the flickering TV screen. It was a kind of battlefield, the only weapon she could use to capture her husband's attention. "Honey, I can't see anything because of you. Can I move over?" Mark fired back incessantly. "No way! You will listen to me whether you like it or not." "But this is an interesting show. They are on the verge of an incredible discovery. I can't miss it. But if you don't turn it off immediately and start listening to me, you'll get a monumental revelation right in the forehead." Mark sighed dramatically and finally gave up. Okay. So what devastating news do you have?" Laura took a deep breath and adopted the kind of serious tone that might belong to a newsreader announcing a disaster. "Listen, Mark. I've come to the conclusion that I'm leaving you." Mark paused, raising his eyebrows as if solving a complex mathematical equation. Then, almost without thinking, he replied, "Well, okay. And when will you be back? Oh, by the way, could you grab some pancakes at the bakery on the way home?" Laura froze, unable to comprehend the absurdity of his answer. "I can't believe it. I broke up with you and there's no turning back. It's a pity. Well, good luck. I'm going to miss you. Can I go back to my show now?" "Is that really all you can say? Does my leaving mean nothing to you after 10 years of marriage? Aren't you going to express any real emotions?" In response, he smiled and said, "How about not forgetting the house keys? Seriously? And what about the sincere, 'Why are you leaving, my dear?' Or the desperate, 'Please don't leave. I can't imagine life without you.' Damn it, even a fiery, 'To hell with you and the horse you rode' will show that you care. Let's look at the passion. I've dedicated a decade of my life to you. I invested time, energy, and money in our home and our life together. I was there for you, physically and emotionally, whenever you wanted. I remember every special occasion, your birthday, Christmas, Valentine's Day, our anniversary, even Mother's Day, even though you haven't become a mom yet." "Wait a minute. Are you pregnant? Is it really because of this? You must be joking. Do you really think that I will leave if I have a child?" "Well, if it's not my child, then maybe I would have left." "Are you seriously accusing me of cheating? How dare you? How could I spend so much time with a pathetic scoundrel like you?" "It seemed to me that this was a reasonable assumption based on your behavior. Let's take a closer look at this, huh? You suddenly dropped a bomb. You're leaving. No explanation, just a sudden departure. It's hard not to wonder if there is someone else in this situation, perhaps another man, who has caught your attention. If this is the case, then most likely you have already taken a step forward with him, and who knows, maybe there is a chance that you are pregnant. My guess is not so far-fetched, is it? I'm not dating anyone else, but your indifference to my feelings makes me reconsider my options. Before you leave, can I ask you something? You're finally showing interest. What's on your mind? Would it bother you if I asked your sister out when you leave? Wait, do you want to date my sister? What makes you think she'd be interested in you? Well, let me remind you about that Christmas at your parents'. After a few glasses of champagne, your sister leaned over to me and whispered that if I ever got tired of it, then I should call her to get real pleasure. And it wasn't just once. She brought up the subject several times, and let's just say her choice of words became more colorful. You're a liar! Why is she even considering you when she has David? Honestly, I have no idea. She's just tired of sharing it with you without getting anything in return. Really? Do you think I'm sleeping with my sister's husband? I am very mistaken that you are sleeping in this bed with him, although I can only wonder why he still wants you after the first time. You dirty animal. Tell me, why don't any of the men want me? I'm constantly being looked after by guys, and if I wanted to, there would be another man in my bed every night. But you know what? Your brother-in-law told me that his wife, your sister, knows how to please him much better than you do. According to him, he's only with you to get back at her. Judging by what she's threatening to do to me, I'd say it works like a charm. Mark, you just made up all this nonsense just to get back at me for leaving you. You don't have any evidence that I had anything with David or anyone else." Reaching into the side pocket of his chair, Mark took out a substantial envelope, fastened with fasteners. "Look at this," he said, satisfaction in his voice. "The divorce papers barely fit on a few pages, and all the rest are photos of you in bed with a man who doesn't even remotely look like me, your husband. I must admit that it was quite difficult to choose the best pictures for my divorce lawyer." Tears streamed down Laura's face and she collapsed to the floor. "This is not what was supposed to happen," she sobbed. "If you had given me the script, I might have played along with you. Out of pure curiosity, how was it supposed to happen? You were supposed to be upset, even furious. You should have begged me to stay, asked me what you needed to do to get me back. And then what? Over time, I would say that I need to be alone. I'd go away and have a wild time with a few different men, and then you'd be waiting for me with open arms when I get back. I'm sorry for breaking your little script, dear. Do you need help with your bags on the way to the car? Don't you have the slightest desire for me to stay? Does our years together mean nothing to you?" I asked, sounding nostalgic and disappointed. "There are still so many wonderful moments in my memory. Do you remember any of them? Could you at least think about going to a consultation? I promise that I will stop dating other men." "Do you think I need a lesson in loyalty?" he snapped, his expression turning hard. "Maybe you'll enroll in some kind of school for walking women like you, where they'll teach you the real art of seduction? When the guys start lining up to give you a second of their time, let me know, and then I might change my mind." "When did you turn into such an angry jerk?" I snapped back, my patience wearing thin. "As soon as I found out that you were sleeping with your brother-in-law," he replied coldly. "It's been 2 years, Mark, and for your information, I'm only here to see my ex-husband, not to stir up an old drama." Mark raised an eyebrow questioningly, and a smirk played on his lips. "Laura, are you really hiding under that makeup?" "Of course it's me, Mark. What's new for you, besides the obvious changes in my appearance?" I said with a playful twinkle in my eyes. "I can make love much better now." "Isn't that what you've always wanted? Did you really find the school of debauchery or something like that?" "What is it?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "In a way, I signed a contract with, let's say, a mentor to learn how to please men in exchange for a year of my life. This year is already over." Mark grinned, leaning closer. "Well, did you graduate with honors?" "Even better," he said, holding out the paper. "This is my certificate confirming that I am free from sexually transmitted diseases." "Did you really come back just to show off your new skills in bed?" he teased. "Maybe, yes. But how do you know that I haven't moved? Maybe I got married again or found someone else since you left. First of all, you're not wearing a ring. And secondly, I know you well. You will not refuse free intimacy, even if you are taken away. So if you've given up the wild lifestyle, why this heavy makeup?" A playful challenge hung in the air between us. The past and the present collided in a dance of memories and unspoken wishes. "I wanted to show you my best side. To be honest, my wardrobe is going through the best of times, and I was hoping that you would help me with this. Do you really think that I will like you so much that I will want to resume our relationship and live together again? Oh yes. You have one chance to impress me. In our old place? No way, it's too far away. I often visit the hotel next door. I have a special rate there." They went through the next door and entered the room. "Okay, Laura, let's see what you've learned." I had every intention of doing just that. There was something about the way she opened up that was more mesmerizing than ever. It was incredible. I have to say it was the best experience we've ever shared. "Laura, you've really improved." "So you forgive me, darling? Will there be no divorce?" Mark just grinned. "Oh no, darling, get out of my house. Your skills will be useful for other men. I captured everything on video, and it will get into the internet space and spread like wildfire. I don't need a cheating wife. I hope that I will meet someone who will be faithful to me and not sleep with everyone for the sake of an intimate experience. Forgiving Laura." Mark went outside, warning his wife that she needed to get out of the house before evening. Laura's shock was written all over her face. Tears wouldn't stop pouring. Her whole plan collapsed. Now she will become famous as a dissolute woman and will be left without a husband and without money. And for Mark, life is just beginning. He got rid of his unfaithful wife and was happy with it. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I was enjoying a bowl of muesli at the kitchen table when a sudden loud knock on the door caught me off guard. Curiosity got the better of me, and I wondered who might come early on Sunday morning. Walking across the tiled floor and opening the door, I found a man in his 40s, dressed in a rumpled, inexpensive suit. 3 uniformed policemen towered behind him, making it clear that this was far from an ordinary Sunday morning. "Mr. Yang?" the man in the suit asked, flashing his badge. "Would you mind if we came in to ask you a few questions?" "I can only talk to one person at a time, Detective. What's your name?" "Robinson. Detective Charlie Robinson. I'm going to ask the questions, Mr. Mitchell. These officers would like to inspect your house if you don't mind," he said. "Do you have a warrant?" I replied. "I've seen enough crime series and I know that in order to enter my house uninvited, you need a warrant," I said firmly. "Unfortunately, we don't have a warrant," the officer replied. "I ask your permission for these officers to search your house. You have the right to refuse." "Then I'll have to get a warrant," the detective conceded. I couldn't remember what I might be hiding, but their intentions were unclear. Maybe there are prohibited materials stored on my laptop. It didn't sound familiar. Maybe a few hidden bodies in the freezer. It seemed unlikely. Well, yes, maybe a few pirated DVDs. "You're not from Interpol, are you?" I asked impulsively. "Not at all, Mr. Yang. Believe me, we are not interested in any pirated films," the detective said, slowly shaking his head. People always seem to worry about it. "Could you explain what's going on?" I asked politely. "It's quite unusual for this area. Why would you search my house?" "Mister, there's been a murder and I'm investigating it. The officers are helping me. Do you have any reason to refuse my request?" Detective Robinson asked. "No," I replied. "I can. I don't want a crowd of strangers wandering around my house. The floor is clean, and I would like it to stay that way. Otherwise, my wife will be upset when she wakes up." "Is that a good enough reason? Should I take you to the station and hold you there for 5 or 6 hours while my colleagues get a search warrant for your immaculate house?" Robinson chuckled. "Gentlemen, you can search here while I keep Detective Robinson occupied," I replied to the 3 uniformed officers. Why they wanted to search my house so badly was unclear to me, but I was sure that they would not find anything particularly disturbing. Maybe only those annoying tags that the children tore off the mattresses and carried past the cash register 15 years ago. Well, if the situation gets out of control, Robinson can go to the university and arrest both my sons. At that time, I did not even think to warn them about the illegality of these labels. I motioned Robinson to a chair as 3 uniformed officers entered the kitchen. It seemed to me that they slowed down and stopped at the island in the center of the room, almost in unison looking in my direction. "Just one each," I muttered, as a trio of officers attacked my box of fresh donuts. A few minutes before they arrived, I picked up a dozen jelly goodies, and the sweet aroma clearly awakened their instincts. Just at that moment, my wife Vanessa came into the kitchen, moving cautiously, clutching the collar of her robe tightly. "What's going on, Oliver? Why the hell are the cops wandering around our house and eating donuts?" she asked, concern written all over her face. "Has something happened?" she added anxiously. "Vanessa, this is Detective Robinson. I hope that he will be able to shed light on the situation with his questions." I motioned for them to look around. That's what I called the search that Robinson started. "Detective, this is my wife, Vanessa. Explain why you're here. Investigating a murder? Mr. Christopher Turner was shot at around midnight yesterday. I think you both knew him?" "Yes, you did," I replied. He was Vanessa's boss, and it became clear that Robinson had a long list of potential alleged suspects. Cuckolds from this guy bred faster than rabbits. Maybe even an army of jealous husbands, I joked, feeling no remorse about the death of my wife's former employer. No one else seemed to find it funny. Vanessa's expression turned ashen white, and tears glistened in her eyes. Robinson just nodded, his gaze fixed on me. Apart from Vanessa's quiet sobs, there was a heavy tension in the room. "Mrs. Yang, How long have you been involved with your employer, Christopher Turner? The detective asked. I didn't have an affair with him, Vanessa replied, her voice trembling. It was more of a passing relationship. I didn't love him or anything like that. We first met about 6 months ago. And I wouldn't hurt anyone, especially Bob. Mrs. Yang, I hadn't thought about it. I'm just trying to piece together all the facts, Robinson said in an indifferent tone. How did your husband react to your affair with Mr. Turner? Was he jealous? Was he angry when he found out about it? Oliver didn't know about my infidelity until that moment, Mr. Robinson. We have never had any conversations on this topic. I have no doubt Oliver would have been upset, but that wouldn't have pushed him to kill Bob, Vanessa replied, although her conviction was less than I would have preferred from my wife. Really? The detective chuckled mockingly. Mr. Yang, tell me, how would you answer the same questions? They began an affair in early August of this year, I replied calmly, just after the Turners' dinner party. Due to problems at work, I was called early. He offered Vanessa a ride home and ended up making love to her in the back seat of his SUV. It doesn't bother me because Vanessa and I have an agreement. In fact, we are free to date whomever we want and we are dating. Vanessa has decided to be with Turner. It was strictly between the two of them. When I told her about it, Vanessa almost fell to the floor. She took a moment to process the information I had just shared with the detective. I could see her thoughts slowly turning over in her head. Why have I never heard of this so-called understanding? Vanessa asked, clearly displeased. Why didn't I know about this? Because that's what behind the scenes means, dear, I replied quickly. If we were in conversation, I would call it an oral agreement. But if we had drawn it up in writing and notarized it, it would have been a written agreement. Our understanding is just unspoken. Well, it would be great if I were informed, Vanessa remarked. I had to put in a lot of effort to keep you in the dark about Bob. In the future, I think we should clearly state all our agreements, or even put them in writing. Such constant confusion is very frustrating. Acknowledging her displeasure, Robinson reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small tape recorder. I should inform you both that I am writing down everything you say. Mrs. Yang, did you have relationships with other men? Or was Mr. Turner your only partner? Of course I was, Vanessa replied, perhaps too categorically. I am a married woman. How did it even occur to you to ask me about this? Detective Robinson asked. Did your husband take advantage of this unspoken agreement, or was he completely devoted to you? Vanessa replied, a little defensively. Oliver would never break our marriage vows. He's as loyal as an old dog. You can put it on the record. Then the detective turned to me. Mr. Yang, I repeat the same questions for you. Do you think you agree with your wife's statements? I replied, Vanessa has been with her colleague, Douglas Lewis, since mid-September. Apart from these two aforementioned gentlemen, she is as devoted to me as the geyser named after her in one of our national parks. Vanessa let out a soft sob. The detective remarked, You seem to be very knowledgeable, Mr. Yang. Even more surprising is your apparent lack of emotion. Most men would react angrily to the idea that their wife has two lovers. But why are you so calm? I explained. We have an unspoken agreement. Vanessa talked openly about her adventures, and I preferred to be more restrained, if you get my point. I grinned faintly. Vanessa looked like she was on the verge of a breakdown. Her eyes stopped watering. Instead, they seemed to bulge out of their sockets. Instead of the usual pallor, a bright red color appeared on his face, and his left hand was clutching a jelly donut. The filling oozed through her fingers, splattering her robe, but she seemed completely oblivious to this outrage. So you're saying that you also had a mistress? The astonished detective demanded clarification. And your wife didn't seem to know about it. Who did you have an affair with, and when did it start, Mr. Mitchell? You have a very sharp insight. No wonder you became a detective before you turned 50, I said with a grin. I remembered the first time I spent a night with Coraline Turner in mid-August, just 2 days after her husband had an affair with Vanessa in the back seat of his car. From that time on, we managed to be together almost every weekday, and I couldn't help but remember it fondly. This adventurous girl definitely had a passion for intimacy. Taken aback, Vanessa raised her hand to her forehead, inadvertently smearing the jelly she was holding on it. She seemed completely oblivious to this, while Robinson, too courteous to point it out, struggled to form a coherent thought. "My God," he finally said. "Did you have a relationship with the widow of the murder victim? Have you been with Coraline Turner every weekday?" I even had to flaunt it. Jelly trickled down Vanessa's face, and she sank into a chair, almost fainting. Robinson was swallowing a small pill similar to the nitroglycerin that my Uncle Derek sometimes took for heart problems. Gathering his thoughts, Robinson began to act. "Mr. Yang, you need to understand that you are related to the wives of two men who are also related to your wife. There can be no simple coincidence here. I can tell you that I have seen Mrs. Lewis, and she is very beautiful. I'm not going to dictate to you what conclusions you should draw, but I had a relationship with these two women right after their husbands were with Vanessa. It's all about revenge sleeping with the wives of your wife's lovers. Passionate revenge is even more satisfying, and I was lucky enough to feel this exciting surge of strength." "So, you killed Christopher Turner in order to repay him for having an affair with your wife?" Robinson exclaimed. "But you were intimate with his wife every weekday. Isn't that enough for you?" He demanded an answer. "The answer to both of your questions is a categorical no. In time you will understand my true revenge," I assured him. "What questions did you just answer no to?" the baffled detective asked, setting up the recorder to play back his previous inquiries. "So you're saying you didn't kill Christopher Turner, or are you saying his death wasn't motivated by revenge?" Robinson asked, listening to himself. "I can answer yes to both of these questions," I replied. "Damn it," Robinson muttered. "I need to remember to ask one question at a time." At that moment, a uniformed officer entered the kitchen, holding a large pistol in his hands and waving it in front of Detective Robinson's astonished eyes. "I found this in the gun safe in the basement." The officer gave me a stern look. "Are you going to mark this as evidence and admit it?" "Great idea," Robinson replied enthusiastically. "Be sure to submit your fingerprints to the laboratory. The owner of these fingerprints is either a cold-blooded killer or the biggest fool in the world," the officer muttered, blushing slightly as he walked out, clutching my magnum with one hand and donuts with the other. The filling has already started to ooze out of them. The detective chuckled as he noticed the strawberry filling dripping from Vanessa's nose onto the kitchen table next to a box of donuts. "Turner was shot with a .44 caliber Magnum pistol. Do you have one, Mr. Yang?" I remembered that one evening I saw a .44 Magnum at Douglas Lewis's. It got me thinking. As you know, jealous husbands can be both ruthless and deadly. That's when I realized that I needed a firearm as reliable as Douglas's in case he decided to fight me in a fit of anger. Not all men are as understanding as I am, so I went and bought one. "We have both a motive and a weapon," Robinson chuckled. "Now we just need the right moment." "I think you spent a quiet evening at home with your wife." "In fact, I spent most of the night in Jill Lewis's bed, or rather in her marital bed. I left at 11:12 at night and went straight home. Vanessa was already asleep when I arrived. I'm not sure Jill will remember the time because she was in a state of heavy intoxication when I left," I added. "It's very convenient. You remember the exact moment of your departure, but Mrs. Lewis was too engrossed to remember anything and your wife was asleep when you returned. I almost hesitate to ask, but how did you manage to remember the exact time when you left the Lewis house?" Robinson asked. "Her husband sent a message to my answering machine while I was having fun with his wife. He mentioned that he was on his way home from the airport, and it was 10:12 p.m. According to my calculations, the earliest he can come home will be around 11:12 p.m., so I tried to leave before that time. On my way home, I noticed his car driving through their neighborhood. If you left at 11:12 p.m., as you claim, then you had more than enough time to get to Turner's house and shoot him when he opened the door," the detective said with a pleased tone in his voice. "I believe we have enough evidence to arrest you for murder, Mr. Yang." The moment he reached for the handcuffs, his cell phone rang. Robinson signaled one of the officers to follow him outside for a private conversation. He was gone for almost 10 minutes. From the look on his face when he returned, everything was clear. Damn it! Detective Harry just got a full confession out of Douglas Lewis. He stated that upon arriving home from the airport, he found his wife asleep, intoxicated and covered in various liquids. He was confused when he noticed a wallet on the floor next to her unconscious body. It belonged to Christopher Turner. He took his gun and went to Turner, making a hole in it big enough for a cat to crawl through. He initially denied everything, but eventually surrendered under interrogation by Harry. "Do you know how Christopher Turner's wallet ended up on the floor of Lewis's bedroom?" asked Robinson. I answered quietly, "I have no idea, Robinson. He often left it on the bedside table next to the bed. I caught a glimpse of her a couple of times when I was with his wife. I can't understand how he or someone else could have left it at the Lewis house by accident. Apparently, one of your wife's lovers is facing a long prison sentence for the murder of her other lover. And all this time you were with their wives much more often than they were with yours, even if there were two of them. Right now, your wife is here in a kind of daze, burying her head in a box of jelly donuts." The only thing I replied was that it was sweeter that way. When the detective and the police left my house, my wayward wife threw herself at my feet, begging for forgiveness. My revenge was sweet, but it wasn't enough for me. All this time I imagined how I would put her out on the street without the means to exist. I made us bankrupt in advance. All our savings were allegedly lost, but only I knew where they were. My revenge was completed when this cheater cried at the door and begged for forgiveness. But I was determined. Now we need to move on, but without her. My 26-year marriage has come to an end. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.